The black Mercedes pulled up to the curb, and Robert Hayes stepped out into the cold November morning. He adjusted his expensive suit jacket and looked up at the massive building in front of him. The old factory had been abandoned for almost 20 years, its windows shattered, walls covered in graffiti, and metal gates rusted beyond repair. But Robert didn't see the decay. He saw opportunity. He saw luxury apartments with floor-to-ceiling windows. He saw a rooftop garden and a fancy gym. He saw millions of dollars in profit. His phone buzzed. It was Jennifer, his assistant. She was running late because of traffic and would meet him there in about 30 minutes. Robert told her not to worry. He wanted to walk around the property alone anyway, take some photos, get a feel for the place before the official inspection next week. He grabbed his camera from the car and walked toward the entrance. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. A few homeless people sat on the sidewalk 2 blocks down. Some old newspapers blew across the empty street. This area had been forgotten by the city, but Robert was about to change that. At least that's what he told himself. As he approached the rusty gates, he heard footsteps running behind him. Fast footsteps. "Sir, wait, please wait." Robert turned around and saw a teenage boy running toward him. The kid looked about 14 or 15, wearing a torn jacket that was too thin for the weather and sneakers with holes in them. His face was dirty, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Don't go in there, sir," the boy said, breathing hard from running. "Please, you can't go in there." Robert sighed. He had expected this. Homeless people probably used the building as shelter, and now they were worried about being kicked out. He had dealt with situations like this before. "Look, kid," Robert said, his voice firm but not unkind. "I own this property now. Well, I will in a few days. I'm just taking some pictures. You don't need to worry about it." "No, you don't understand," the boy insisted, stepping closer. His name was Danny, though Robert didn't know that yet. "It's dangerous in there. Really dangerous. People have gotten hurt. You shouldn't go inside." Robert glanced at the building and then back at the boy. "Is this about you living in there? Because if it is, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to look around." "I'm not lying to you," Danny said, his voice more desperate now. "My sister and I. Yes, we stay around here sometimes. But that's not why I'm telling you this. The building is falling apart. There are chemicals inside. The floors aren't stable. You could get seriously hurt." Robert had heard enough. He appreciated that the kid was concerned, or at least pretending to be, but he had work to do. He had purchased dozens of properties like this one. He knew how to be careful. "I'll be fine," Robert said, turning away. "I know what I'm doing. Sir, please." Danny called out, following him a few steps. "At least let me show you which parts are safe. I know this building. I've been here for months. I can help you." Robert stopped and looked back at the boy. For a moment, something in Danny's eyes made him hesitate. There was genuine fear there. But then Robert's phone buzzed again with an email from his lawyer about the property deal, and the moment passed. "Kid, I don't need a tour guide," Robert said, not rudely but dismissively. "Go find somewhere warm to stay. Here." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill. "Get yourself some food." Danny didn't take the money. "I don't want your money. I want you to listen to me. Don't go in there alone. At least wait for whoever you're meeting." But Robert was already walking away, pushing open the partially broken gate. It screeched loudly as it moved. Behind him, he heard Danny say one more time quietly, almost to himself, "Please don't go in there." Robert stepped onto the property. The front yard was covered in dead weeds and broken glass. Old machinery parts were scattered everywhere, rusting in the weather. He took a few photos with his camera, making mental notes about what needed to be cleared away. The front door to the building was already open, hanging crooked on its hinges. Robert stepped inside. The interior was worse than he expected. The ceiling had holes where rain had come through. Pigeons had nested in the upper corners and their droppings covered the floor. Old graffiti covered every wall. Some of it was artwork, actually pretty good. Some of it was just names and dates. Some of it was warnings. Robert saw spray-painted words on one wall, "Turn back." On another, "Danger below." He shook his head. Probably just kids trying to scare people, or maybe the homeless people trying to keep others away. He walked deeper into the building, his expensive shoes crunching on broken glass and debris. The place smelled terrible, mold, chemicals, and something else he couldn't identify. He took more photos, examining the support beams and the walls. Some of it would need to be completely demolished, but the bones of the building seemed solid enough. He found the stairs leading down to the basement. That's where the old manufacturing equipment would be. That's what he needed to see to finalize his cost estimates. The demolition company needed to know what kind of machinery they'd be removing. The stairs creaked under his weight, but they held. Robert turned on his phone's flashlight. The basement was dark, with only thin streams of light coming through small windows near the ceiling. It was colder down here, and the chemical smell was stronger. He could see the outlines of old machines, large industrial equipment that had been left behind decades ago. This was going to cost more than he thought to remove, but it would be worth it. He walked between the machines, taking photos, making notes on his phone. Then he heard it. A creaking sound. Not just old building noises. Something different. Something that made him freeze in place. The floor beneath him felt wrong. Soft. Unstable. Robert took a step backward, but it was too late. The sound changed from a creak to a crack, sharp and sudden. The wood floor gave way beneath him like it was made of paper. He fell. For a moment, everything seemed to happen in slow motion. His camera flew from his hand. His phone tumbled away, its light spinning wildly. His arms reached for something, anything to grab onto, but found only empty air. Then he hit the ground hard. Pain exploded through his left leg. His head smacked against something solid. For a few seconds, everything went black. When he opened his eyes, Robert couldn't see anything. Complete darkness. His phone's flashlight must have broken in the fall. He tried to move, and pain shot up his leg so intense that he almost passed out again. His leg was definitely broken, or at least badly hurt. He reached for his phone, patting the ground around him. His hand finally found it, but when he pressed the button, nothing happened. The screen was shattered, completely dead. Robert tried to call out for help, but his voice came out weak and shaky. "Hello, anyone? I need help." Only silence answered him. And then slowly he became aware of the smell. Stronger down here, much stronger. Chemicals, toxic chemicals. His eyes started to water. His throat began to burn slightly. Above him, maybe 12 feet up, he could see the jagged hole where he had fallen through. A tiny amount of light came through, just enough to see that he was in some kind of sub-basement. The walls around him were concrete. Old barrels and containers lined the sides, chemical storage that had been abandoned and forgotten. Robert's heart started to pound. The kid had tried to warn him. Danny had tried to tell him it was dangerous. And he hadn't listened. He had been so sure of himself, so confident, so dismissive of a homeless teenager who actually knew what he was talking about. Now he was trapped in the darkness, injured with no phone and no one knowing exactly where he was inside this massive building. Jennifer wouldn't arrive for at least 20 more minutes, and even then, would she know where to look? The chemical smell was getting stronger. Robert's head felt fuzzy. He didn't know if it was from hitting his head or from breathing the fumes. Probably both. He tried to call out again, louder this time, fighting through the pain. "Help! Someone! I'm down here, help!" His voice echoed in the empty sub-basement and faded away into nothing. Outside the building, Danny stood frozen by the gate. He had heard the crash, a loud, terrible sound that echoed from somewhere deep inside the factory. His stomach dropped. The man had fallen, he knew it. He had seen it happen before. Danny's hands clenched into fists. Part of him wanted to walk away. The millionaire hadn't listened. He had treated Danny like he was nobody, like his warning meant nothing. And this man was about to destroy the only shelter Danny and his sister Lily had. Why should he help? But even as these thoughts ran through his mind, Danny's feet were already moving toward the building. He couldn't just leave someone to die. He wasn't that person. He wouldn't become that person, no matter how hard life had been. Danny slipped through the gate and into the building. He knew every inch of this place. He had to. Knowing where to step and where not to step was the difference between life and death when you lived in abandoned buildings. An old man named Walter had taught him. Walter used to work in this factory 30 years ago. Back when it was still running, he had been homeless too, living here until he died 6 months ago from pneumonia. Walter had shown Danny the safe paths, the dangerous rooms, the places where the floor was rotten. He had told him about the sub-basement where they stored chemicals back in the day. He had warned him never to go down there. Danny moved quickly through the first floor, avoiding the weak spots he knew were there. He reached the basement stairs and paused. The chemical smell hit him immediately, stronger than usual. His eyes started watering. He pulled his shirt up over his nose and mouth and started down the stairs, testing each step before putting his full weight on it. At the bottom, he could see the hole in the floor where the man had fallen through. It was bigger than he expected, jagged edges of broken wood pointing down into darkness. Danny knelt by the edge and called down, "Sir, can you hear me?" For a moment there was nothing. Then a weak voice came from below. "Hello, who's there? I need help." "It's me." The kid from outside, Danny. There was a pause. "Then you came back?" "Yeah, well, someone had to," Danny said. He looked around for something to use. "Are you hurt?" "My leg. I think it's broken. And my phone is dead. I can't see anything down here." Danny knew he couldn't pull the man up by himself. The man was too heavy and the edges of the hole were too unstable. He needed to go down there, assess the situation, and figure out a plan. "I'm coming down," Danny said. "Stay still." "The smell," Robert said, his voice sounding weaker. "What is that smell?" "Old chemicals. The factory used to make industrial cleaners. They left a bunch of barrels down there when they shut down. That's why I told you not to come in here." Danny found an old metal pipe that looked sturdy enough. He tested his weight on it, bracing it against a concrete support beam. Then he lowered himself through the hole, using the pipe and the rough edges of the broken floor to climb down. His feet touched solid ground. The sub-basement was pitch black except for the small amount of light coming from the hole above. Danny pulled out a small flashlight from his pocket. It wasn't much, just a cheap thing he had found in a dumpster, but it worked. He shined the light around and found Robert sitting against the wall, his face pale and sweaty. His left leg was bent at a weird angle. Definitely broken or at least badly injured. "Okay," Danny said, kneeling beside him. "Let me see." Robert winced as Danny examined his leg. "You carry a flashlight?" "Always," Danny said. "You learn to be prepared when you live like we do." "We?" "My sister and me, Lily, she's 10. Danny found some old wooden boards nearby. They weren't perfect, but they would work. I need to stabilize your leg before we try to move you. This is going to hurt." "Wait," Robert said, grabbing Danny's arm. "Why are you helping me?" "I didn't listen to you. I was rude to you." Danny met his eyes. "Yeah, you were. But that doesn't mean I should let you die down here." He worked quickly, using strips of cloth from his own jacket to tie the boards to Robert's leg. Robert gritted his teeth through the pain but didn't cry out. When Danny finished, he sat back. "We have a problem," Danny said. "I can't lift you back up through that hole by myself, and we can't stay down here much longer. These fumes are toxic. We need to wait for your assistant to show up." "Jennifer," Robert said. "She should be here in about 15 minutes. Maybe less." "Okay, we wait. But we need to stay alert. The fumes can make you pass out if you breathe them too long." They sat in silence for a moment. The only sound was their breathing and the occasional drip of water somewhere in the darkness. "How long have you been living here?" Robert asked. Danny shrugged. "About 8 months. Before that, we were in different places around the city." "Your parents?" "Dead. Mom died 2 years ago. Cancer. No insurance, no money for treatment. It ate through our savings and then it took her anyway." Danny's voice was flat, emotionless. He had told this story before. To social workers, to shelter staff. It never got easier. "Dad left when I was 6. Never met him. What about other family? Grandparents? Aunts or uncles?" "Nope. Just me and Lily." Danny adjusted his position, keeping the flashlight pointed away from Robert's eyes. "Child services wanted to put us in foster care. Separate foster care. Different homes. I couldn't let that happen. Lily's all I have, and I'm all she has. So we ran." Robert was quiet for a moment. "That must be incredibly hard." "It is what it is," Danny said. But then he added more softly, "Lily deserves better. She's smart, really smart. She should be in a normal school, living in a normal house, being a normal kid. Instead, she's sleeping in abandoned buildings and eating whatever I can find or buy with the money I make from odd jobs." "How do you manage? Food, clothes, keeping her safe?" Danny leaned back against the cold concrete wall. "Walter helped us at first. The old man I told you about. He used to work here, knew the building inside and out. He taught me where to sleep, where not to go, how to avoid the dangerous people who come around sometimes. He showed me which dumpsters behind restaurants have good food, which shelters serve meals and don't ask too many questions, where the library is so Lily can read and study. He sounds like a good man." He was. He looked out for us like we were his own grandkids. Danny's voice caught slightly. When he got sick last winter, I tried to get him to a hospital, but he refused. Said he'd lived his life and wasn't afraid of dying. He made me promise to take care of Lily, to keep her safe no matter what. Then one morning he didn't wake up. I'm sorry, Robert said, and he meant it. After he died, I thought about turning ourselves in, going back to the system. But Lily was so scared of being separated from me. She has nightmares about it. So I kept going. Robert studied the boy in the dim light. Danny's face was dirty. His clothes were torn, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. He moved with purpose, spoke with clarity. This wasn't a kid who had given up. This was someone fighting with everything he had. You tried to warn me, Robert said. You knew exactly what would happen. This isn't the first time someone's fallen through that floor, Danny said quietly. Last year, a man came in looking for copper wire to sell. He fell through a different section. Broke his back. By the time anyone found him, it was too late. Walter and I heard him calling for help, but we couldn't reach him. He was too far in, and the structure around him was too unstable. Robert felt sick, and it wasn't just from the fumes. And before that, a few other close calls. Some people got hurt but survived. This building has been dying for years, and nobody cares because nobody comes here, except people like us who have nowhere else to go. Above them, they heard a sound. Footsteps. A woman's voice calling out. Robert? Robert, are you here?
Your car is outside.
Down here, Robert shouted, his voice hoarse. Jennifer, we're in the basement. Call 911. Danny stood up, shining his flashlight up toward the hole. We're okay, he called. But we need help. They heard Jennifer's footsteps running, heard her voice on the phone giving their location to emergency services. Robert looked up at Danny. You saved my life. Maybe, Danny said. Or maybe I just kept you alive until the real help got here. Either way, thank you. Danny didn't respond. He was already thinking about what came next. The police would come. They would ask questions. They might call child services. He and Lily would have to run again, find a new place to hide. But for now, they waited in the darkness, the millionaire and the homeless boy, breathing the same toxic air. The paramedics arrived within 12 minutes. Danny heard their heavy footsteps above, heard Jennifer explaining what happened, heard the crackle of radios and urgent voices coordinating the rescue. 2 firefighters appeared at the hole above them, shining powerful lights down into the sub-basement. The light hurt Danny's eyes after sitting in near darkness for so long. How many people down there? One of them called. 2, Robert answered. I have a broken leg. The boy is okay. All right, we're lowering a ladder. Kid, you come up first. But Danny was already moving backward, away from the circle of light. His survival instincts kicked in. Paramedics meant police. Police meant questions. Questions meant child services. Child services meant losing Lily. Hey, where are you going? Robert asked, noticing Danny retreating into the shadows. I can't be here when they come down, Danny said quietly. They'll ask questions I can't answer. They'll take Lily away from me. Wait, you can't just disappear into the dark down here. You don't know what's back there. I know this building better than anyone, Danny said. He pulled out his small flashlight. There's another way out through the old service tunnel. Walter showed me. I'll be fine. Danny, but the boy was already gone, swallowed by the darkness before Robert could say anything else. The firefighters came down with their ladder and equipment. They carefully secured Robert to a backboard and lifted him up. As they worked, Robert kept looking into the darkness where Danny had vanished, but there was no sign of him. At the hospital, Robert's leg was X-rayed, cleaned, and set in a cast. Broken in 2 places, the doctor said. He was lucky it wasn't worse. They wanted to keep him overnight for observation because of the chemical exposure and the head injury. Jennifer sat beside his bed, her laptop open, already rescheduling his meetings for the next week. She was efficient like that, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Did you see where the kid went? Robert asked her. Jennifer looked up from her screen. What kid? The boy who was with me in the basement. The one who came down to help me. Did he come up? Robert, when I got there and looked down that hole, you were alone. There was no boy, Robert frowned. He was there. He climbed down to help me. His name is Danny. He's homeless, lives in the building with his sister. Jennifer gave him a concerned look. You hit your head pretty hard. The doctor said you might have some confusion for a while. I'm not confused, Robert insisted. He was real. He saved my life. But Jennifer had already gone back to her laptop, making a note to have the doctor check for a concussion. Robert lay back against the pillows, frustrated. He knew what he had experienced. Danny was real. The conversation they had was real. The boy had risked his own safety to help him, then vanished to protect his sister. Over the next 2 weeks, Robert couldn't stop thinking about Danny and Lily. As his leg healed and he worked from home, his mind kept returning to that sub-basement, to the boy's story, to the choice Danny had made to help him despite having every reason not to. Robert had built his fortune on being practical, on making smart business decisions, on seeing opportunities others missed. But he had missed something important with Danny. He had dismissed him, judged him, assumed he knew better. He hired a private investigator named Chen. "I need you to find someone," Robert told him over the phone. "A teenage boy around 14 or 15 goes by Danny. He has a younger sister named Lily, about 10 years old. They're homeless, been living around the old factory district downtown." Chen was good at his job. It took him 11 days, but he found them. They were living in a different abandoned building 3 miles from the factory, an old elementary school that had been closed for budget cuts 5 years ago. Chen didn't approach them, just confirmed their location and reported back to Robert. Robert went there alone against Jennifer's advice. He parked his car 2 blocks away and walked, his leg still in a cast, using a crutch. The November cold had turned brutal and snow was starting to fall. He found them in what used to be the school's gymnasium. Someone had left old mattresses there, and Danny had created a makeshift shelter in the corner using cardboard boxes and plastic tarps. A small camping stove sat nearby, the kind you could buy at a dollar store. Lily saw him first. She was sitting on one of the mattresses reading a library book, wrapped in a blanket that had seen better days. Her eyes went wide when she saw the well-dressed man with a cast on his leg limping toward them. "Danny!" she called out, her voice frightened. Danny emerged from behind the cardboard wall. His eyes met Robert's, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "How did you find us?" Danny asked finally, moving to stand between Robert and his sister. "I hired someone to look. I needed to find you." "Why?" Danny's body was tense, ready to run or fight if necessary. "Because you saved my life and I never got to properly thank you." Robert stopped a respectful distance away, not wanting to seem threatening. "And because I've been thinking about what you said about your situation about Lily." "We're fine," Danny said quickly. Too quickly. Robert looked around the cold gymnasium, at the thin blankets, at the camping stove that probably barely worked, at Lily shivering despite being wrapped in layers. "You're not fine. Nobody should have to live like this, especially not a 10-year-old girl." "What do you want?" Danny asked, his voice hard. "To feel better about yourself? To ease your guilt? You want to give us some money and then go back to your nice warm house and forget about us?" "No," Robert said calmly. "I want to offer you something. A real offer, not charity." Danny crossed his arms. "I'm listening. I'm going to redesign that factory project. After what happened, after everything you told me, I realized I was approaching it all wrong. I want to build something that actually helps people, not just makes money. But I need someone who knows the building, who understands its dangers, who can help me do it right." "You want to hire me?" Danny's voice dripped with skepticism. "As a consultant, a paid position. You'd help identify structural problems, safety issues, anything I need to know. And before you say you're too young, there are legal ways to do this. Youth employment programs, educational internships. And in exchange? In exchange, you let me help you and Lily get into stable housing. Not foster care." Robert added quickly, seeing Danny's expression change. "I have connections with family services, people who can arrange for a guardian situation, someone who can provide legal oversight but let you stay together." Danny stared at him for a long moment. "Why would you do this?" "Because you were right. About the building, about me not listening, about everything. And because when I was trapped in that basement, you came back. You didn't have to. I had been rude to you, dismissive, everything you said. My project was going to force you out of the only shelter you had, but you still came back to help me. So this is guilt. Maybe some," Robert admitted, "but it's also recognition. You're smart, Danny. The way you navigate that building, the way you take care of your sister, the choices you make, that takes intelligence and courage. You shouldn't have to waste that just trying to survive." Lily spoke up for the first time, her voice small. "Danny, I'm really cold." Danny looked at his sister and something in his expression cracked. Robert saw it, the exhaustion, the fear, the weight of trying to protect her every single day with no help and no end in sight. "What about Lily?" Danny asked quietly. "Where would she go? What happens to her?" "She goes wherever you go. That's non-negotiable. You stay together. And if it doesn't work out, if your plan falls apart, then we figure out another plan." "But Danny, what you're doing now, it can't last forever. Winter is here. It's only going to get colder. Lily needs to be in school, really in school, not just visiting the library. She needs to be safe. And you," Robert paused, "you need to be a 15-year-old kid sometimes, not just a parent." "I'm 14, Danny said. "Even worse." They stood there in the cold gymnasium, the snow falling outside the broken windows, Lily watching them both with hope and fear in her eyes. "I don't trust Easy," Danny said finally. "I wouldn't expect you to, but I'm asking you to try, just try. If it doesn't feel right, you can walk away, but give it a chance." Danny looked at Lily again. She was crying now, silent tears running down her dirty face. "I'm so tired, Danny," she whispered. "I'm so tired of being cold and scared." And that was what broke him. Not Robert's offer, not the promise of money or stability, but his sister's tears and the truth that he couldn't keep doing this forever. "Okay," Danny said, his voice barely audible. "Okay, we'll try." The first night in a real bed, Lily cried. Not sad tears, but the kind that comes from relief so deep it hurts. Danny sat on the edge of her bed in the small apartment Robert had arranged, watching his sister finally let go of 2 years of fear and exhaustion. Robert had worked fast. Within 3 days, he had connected them with a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, a retired teacher who ran a guardian program for youth in difficult situations. She had a small house with 2 spare bedrooms and had been doing this work for 15 years. After meeting Danny and Lily, talking with them for hours, she agreed to take them in. It wasn't foster care, not technically. Patricia provided legal oversight and a stable address, but Danny still made decisions about their lives. It was a compromise that let them stay together while giving them the stability they desperately needed. But trust didn't come easy. For the first week, Danny barely slept. He kept his backpack packed under his bed, ready to run if this all fell apart. He watched Patricia carefully, looking for signs that she would change, that she would try to control them or separate them. He had learned the hard way that adults made promises they didn't keep. Patricia understood. She had seen kids like Danny before. Kids who had been let down so many times they couldn't believe in kindness anymore. She gave them space, let them adjust, and didn't push. Lily adapted faster. She was younger, more ready to hope. Within days, she was exploring the house, helping Patricia cook dinner, laughing at things on TV. Danny watched her transform, saw the fear leave her eyes, and felt something inside himself start to crack open. Robert visited regularly, always calling first, always respectful of their space. He brought Danny folders full of information about the factory project, structural reports, environmental assessments, blueprints that were decades old. "I need your eyes on this," Robert said during one visit, spreading papers across Patricia's dining room table. "These blueprints are from 1962. You said Walter worked there. Do you remember him talking about changes they made to the building over the years?" Danny studied the blueprints. His finger traced the layout of the basement. "This is wrong," he said. "There's a whole section here that's not on the map." "They added it in the 70s, Walter said. When they expanded the chemical storage, Robert made notes. "What else?" "The support beams on the east side, they're not original. They replaced them in the 80s after a fire. Walter said they did it cheap, used weaker materials. That whole section isn't stable." Over the following weeks, Danny's knowledge proved invaluable. He caught problems that would have cost Robert hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. He identified hazardous areas, warned about underground storage tanks that weren't on any official records, and explained the building's quirks that only someone who had lived there would know. But more than that, Danny started asking questions. "Why luxury apartments?" he asked one afternoon. They were at the factory site with a team of engineers, all of them treating Danny with respect because Robert insisted on it. "The people around here can't afford luxury anything." Robert paused. "Because that's what sells. That's what brings in profit. So the people who live here now, they just get pushed out? They go from homeless to homeless somewhere else?" The engineer standing next to them shifted uncomfortably. Robert looked at Danny for a long moment. "What would you suggest?" Robert asked. "Mixed income," Danny said. Build apartments that regular people can afford. Not just expensive ones. Make it so the people who actually live in this neighborhood have a chance to stay here. That's less profitable. Maybe. But it's better. Walter used to tell me about this neighborhood when it was good. When people had jobs at the factory, when families lived here. He said the neighborhood died when the factory closed and everyone who had money left. If you just build for rich people, you're not fixing anything. You're just moving the problem. That conversation stuck with Robert. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Danny had said, about Walter's memories, about neighborhoods that died because no one invested in the people who lived there. He started redesigning the project. His business partners thought he was crazy. "You're going to tank the profit margins," his CFO said during a tense meeting. "Mixed income housing in that neighborhood is a risk." "Maybe," Robert replied. "But it's the right thing to do." "Since when do you make business decisions based on what's right?" Robert didn't have a good answer for that. Since a 14-year-old boy climbed down into a toxic basement to save someone who had treated him like he was invisible, since he realized that profit wasn't the same thing as purpose, Danny continued to surprise everyone. He attended meetings with engineers and architects asking questions that showed he understood far more than anyone expected. He had taught himself by reading library books, by listening to Walter's stories, by being curious about everything. One of the architects, an older man named Frank, pulled Robert aside after a meeting. "That kid is sharp. Really sharp. Has he ever thought about studying engineering?" "I don't know," Robert said. "I'll ask him." When Robert brought it up, Danny looked skeptical. "I didn't even finish middle school properly. I've been moving around too much. That can be fixed. Patricia said you could enroll in school now that you have a stable address. I'm way behind everyone my age. You navigated an abandoned building in complete darkness, created a shelter that kept you and your sister alive for months, and you're catching structural problems that engineers with degrees are missing. You're not behind. You're just educated differently." Danny didn't respond, but Robert could see him thinking about it. Lily was thriving. She had enrolled in school and was catching up quickly. Her teachers reported that she was bright, eager to learn, and incredibly resilient. She made friends, joined the art club, and came home every day with stories about normal kid things. Homework, playground games, what someone said at lunch. Watching her happy made Danny finally start to believe that maybe this was real. Maybe they were safe now, but believing didn't come all at once. It came in small moments. The first time Patricia hugged him and he didn't flinch away. The first time he slept through the night without his backpack packed. The first time he let himself imagine a future beyond just surviving. 2 months after moving in with Patricia, Danny came to Robert with a folder full of sketches and notes. "I've been thinking about the factory project," Danny said. "What if we added a community center? Not just apartments, but a place where people could learn skills, get job training, have somewhere to go." Robert looked through the sketches. They were rough but thoughtful. "Tell me more." "Walter always said the factory used to run training programs for new workers. They taught people skills. What if we brought that back? Partner with local businesses, teach people trades, help them get jobs, and maybe," Danny hesitated, "maybe have resources for homeless people. Not a shelter exactly, but a place where they could get help, get clean clothes, use computers to apply for jobs." "You're thinking about the people you left behind," Robert said gently. "I think about them every day," Danny admitted. "I got lucky. You found me, but there are so many others who won't get found, who won't get a chance. If we're going to build something there, it should help them too." Robert studied the boy in front of him. 2 months ago, Danny had been sleeping in an abandoned school, fighting every day just to keep his sister safe. Now he was designing community programs and thinking about how to help others. "You know what?" Robert said. "I think you're right. Let's do it." "Really? Really? But I have a condition." Danny's expression became guarded again. "What condition?" "You go back to school properly. I've been talking to Patricia about programs for kids in your situation. There's a good school nearby that specializes in helping students who've had interrupted education. They'll work with you, help you catch up. I need to work. I need to help pay Patricia back for— Patricia doesn't need your money. And yes, you'll still work with me on the project, but as an intern through a proper program. It's part-time, it's legal, and it counts as school credit." Robert leaned forward. "Danny, you're brilliant. But you need education to go with that brilliance. Let us help you build a real future." Danny was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Walter wanted me to go to college. He made me promise I wouldn't give up on school even when things were hard. Then let's honor that promise." "Okay," Danny said finally. "Okay." That night, Danny told Lily about the plans for the factory, about the community center, about going back to school. She listened with wide eyes, then hugged him tight. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. And for the first time in years, Danny let himself feel proud too. 15 months later, Danny stood in front of the transformed factory building and barely recognized it. Where there had once been broken windows and crumbling walls, there was now a beautiful structure that somehow kept the character of the old building while making it safe and modern. The grand opening was scheduled for 2 o'clock. People were already gathering outside. Curious neighbors, city officials, reporters, and many others who had heard about the unusual project. Robert had insisted that Danny be part of the opening ceremony, but Danny was nervous. He wasn't used to crowds or attention. "You okay?" Lily asked, walking up beside him. She looked so different now, healthy, confident, wearing a new dress she had picked out herself. She was 11 now, taller, with color in her cheeks and a brightness in her eyes that had been missing for so long. "Just nervous," Danny admitted. "You'll be fine. You've talked to bigger crowds during the project meetings." That was true. Over the past year, Danny had become an unexpected voice in community development meetings. At 15, he was the youngest person in most rooms, but people listened when he spoke because he understood things they didn't. He knew what it meant to have nothing. He knew what communities needed to survive. School had been hard at first. Danny had enrolled in the program Robert mentioned, and it was tough catching up on years of missed education. But he was motivated and he had help. Patricia tutored him in the evenings. Robert paid for extra classes during the summer. Slowly, steadily, Danny closed the gaps. His teachers were impressed. One of them, Mr. Chen, had told him he had a natural gift for mathematics and spatial reasoning. "You should consider engineering," he had said. The same thing the architect Frank had told him a year ago. Danny was starting to believe it might be possible. The building's transformation had been incredible to watch. Robert had listened to Danny's ideas about mixed-income housing. Of the 80 apartments in the building, 30 were market rate, 30 were affordable housing for working families, and 20 were designated for people transitioning out of homelessness. Each apartment was small but well-designed, with everything someone needed to start over. But the part Danny was most proud of was the community center on the ground floor. It took up almost a quarter of the building. There was a computer lab where people could learn skills and search for jobs, a kitchen where cooking classes were held, meeting rooms that local organizations could use for free, a clothes closet with donated professional attire for job interviews, and counselors who could help connect people with resources, healthcare, education, legal aid, mental health support. The center had a name carved into a wooden plaque above the entrance: the Walter Hayes Community Center. Robert had tracked down Walter's full name through old factory employment records. He had also found that Walter had served in Vietnam, had worked at the factory for 23 years, and had a daughter somewhere in California who had lost touch with him years ago. Robert found her, told her about what Walter had done for Danny and Lily, how he had saved their lives by teaching them to survive. She had cried on the phone. She hadn't known her father was homeless, hadn't known he died alone, but knowing that he had helped these kids in his final months gave her some peace. She couldn't come to the opening, but she sent a letter thanking Danny for remembering her father and making sure his kindness wasn't forgotten. Patricia touched Danny's shoulder, pulling him from his thoughts. "It's almost time. Robert is looking for you." Danny found Robert near the main entrance, talking with the mayor and some other officials. Robert's leg had healed completely, though he walked with a slight limp now when the weather was cold. He smiled when he saw Danny approaching. "There you are, ready? As ready as I'll be." The ceremony began with Robert at the microphone, standing in front of the crowd that had grown to several hundred people. He talked about the project, about the vision of creating housing that served everyone, not just the wealthy. He talked about sustainability and community investment. Then he did something unexpected. He told them about the day he almost died. 15 months ago, I came to this building with one plan in mind. I was going to tear it down and build something expensive, something exclusive, something profitable. I didn't care about the neighborhood or the people who lived here. I just saw dollar signs. The crowd was quiet, listening. A homeless boy tried to warn me not to go inside. He told me it was dangerous. I didn't listen. I thought I knew better. Robert's voice grew quiet. I was wrong. I fell through a floor into a toxic sub-basement. I couldn't call for help. I couldn't get out. And that boy, the one I had dismissed and treated like he was invisible, he came back. He risked his own safety to help me. Robert gestured to Danny. That boy is Danny Hayes. He's 15 years old now. For 2 years before we met, he and his sister lived in abandoned buildings, fighting every day just to survive. And when I was trapped and injured, he was the one who saved my life. People turned to look at Danny. He felt his face get hot with embarrassment. But Danny did more than save my life that day, Robert continued. He changed how I see the world. He taught me that real development isn't about making money. It's about making a difference. Every decision we made on this project, every design choice, every program we created, Danny's voice was part of it. He made this building what it is. Robert stepped away from the microphone and gestured for Danny to come forward. Danny's legs felt shaky, but he walked up anyway. Lily was cheering from the front row, and that gave him courage. Standing at the microphone, looking at all those faces, Danny took a breath. I'm not good at speeches, he started, and some people laughed kindly. But I want to talk about Walter Hayes. That's who this community center is named after. Walter was homeless like I was. He lived in this building before it was safe, before anyone cared about it. He was a veteran and a good man who fell through the cracks of a system that forgot about him. Danny's voice grew stronger. Walter taught me how to survive. He showed me which parts of this building were dangerous and which were safe. He made sure my sister and I didn't die from the cold or from toxic chemicals or from collapsing floors. He died 6 months before I met Mr. Hayes, and I think about him every single day. The people who will live in these apartments, the people who will use this community center, they're not statistics. They're not problems to be solved. They're people like Walter. People like me and my sister. Everyone deserves a safe place to live. Everyone deserves a chance. Danny paused, looking at the building behind him. This building almost killed Mr. Hayes because it was forgotten and left to rot. But now it's going to save lives. It's going to give people chances they wouldn't have had. That's what Walter would have wanted. He spent his life helping people, even when he had nothing himself. So this isn't really about me or Mr. Hayes. It's about everyone who came before us, who survived when they shouldn't have, who helped others when they didn't have to. It's about building something that matters. When Danny stepped away from the microphone, people were wiping their eyes. Lily ran up and hugged him tight. Patricia was crying, proud and happy. Robert shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. The ribbon was cut. People toured the building, amazed at what had been created. The first families began moving into their apartments that week. The community center opened its doors, and within days, it was full of people learning, connecting, and rebuilding their lives. 3 months later, Danny was accepted into a special program for students interested in engineering. His grades had improved dramatically. He was no longer the scared boy sleeping in abandoned buildings. He was a student, a brother, a person with a future, but he never forgot where he came from. Once a month, he volunteered at the community center, talking to people who were homeless, sharing his story, offering hope. He couldn't save everyone, but he could help some, just like Walter had helped him. One evening, sitting on Patricia's porch with Lily, watching the sunset, Danny thought about that November day when he had tried to warn a stranger not to enter a dangerous building. He thought about how a single choice to help someone, even someone who had been rude to you, could change everything. "What are you thinking about?" Lily asked. "Just how different things are now," Danny said. "A year and a half ago, we had nothing. We were nobody." "We were never nobody," Lily said firmly. "We were always somebody. The world just wasn't paying attention." Danny smiled at his sister's wisdom. She was right. They had always mattered. It just took falling through a floor for someone to notice. And maybe that was the real lesson. Everyone matters. Everyone deserves to be heard. Sometimes you just need someone willing to listen. Sometimes you just need someone who comes back even when they don't have to. Sometimes all it takes is someone who refuses to leave you in the dark.